Welcome to Morning Call, a podcast where we share our experiences around letting go of grief and learn to move with grace through mourning. We are your hosts, Elise Christina
and Crystal Lee, two friends who connected through yoga and movement and ultimately found a deeper connection over our own parental losses.
We share how our experiences have informed us to live our lives more authentically, boldly, and in the now so that you can do the same. We believe where there is pain, there is transformation.
From the loss of a loved one to change in a career, a heartbreak, identity shift, and many other forms of loss, we walk this path together.
To discover the light within the darkness, we recognize the joy within pain and invite you to dive in with us as we share in the hope, laughter, and lightness of the mourning journey.
Join us for stories, interviews, and conversations that connect us as we explore the universal experience of loss that invokes the becoming of one's true self.
Welcome back to Morning Call. I'm your co-host, Elise.
And I'm your co-host, Crystal.
And we are so excited today to have two amazing guests with us, Andrew Barclay and Amy Liebaert. Hi, welcome. I'll start by introducing Andrew Barclay. He is a dynamic leader with over 20 years of experience in customer service, management, and leadership development. Based in Saskatoon, he has built a career focused on people, whether leading high-performing teams, optimizing operations, or creating meaningful client experiences. In addition to his corporate background, working with companies like Lululemon Athletica, Andrew is an entrepreneur, leadership coach, bartender, and yoga instructor, demonstrating that growth and connection occur in all areas of life. Currently, Andrew serves as the head of client relations at Cadence.
And our other guest today is Amy Liebaert. Welcome, Amy. And she is the lead marketing specialist at Cadence. She's a proud graduate of the University of Saskatchewan with a degree in marketing and international business and has built her career around her love for creativity, knack for detail-oriented design, and dedication to uplifting others. In addition to her work at Cadence, Amy extends her marketing experience to her passion for music. Supporting her family's local music venue, she has helped attract emerging artists from around the world to share their craft with a supportive community. Outside of her professional endeavors, you'll often find Amy traveling, enjoying live music, or spending quality time with friends and family. So welcome, Amy and Andrew from Cadence. So tell us just really quickly about, just briefly what Cadence is, and then how, whoever wants to start first, how you both came to this line of work, kind of your personal connection to Cadence.
Sure. So, again, thank you so much for having us here. We're so excited to be here today. Thanks for all those listening and watching us here. So, Cadence is a tech company based out of Canada. Our head office is in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where Amy and I are both located, and our product actually is available all throughout Canada and through the United States. So, we are a tech company, and we support businesses in offering holistic estate planning tools, as well as comprehensive estate settlement tools and grief support. Yeah. And really, the mission of our company is to bring simplicity, clarity, and compassion to the end of life process, supporting individuals and families through one of life's most difficult transitions.
That's amazing. I would love to add just our connection and how we have all connected and landed here today with each other. So Andrew and I both study and are certified under Suzanne Conrad with Lightyear Leadership. And I was on a one-on-one call with Suzanne, and founder and creator of Lightyear. And she was like, "You have to talk to Andrew." She was like, "I think that this would just be an amazing partnership to facilitate and connect." So that's how we are connected. And then Andrew, you brought Amy in, and Amy, you're the head of marketing, correct? For Cadence, and yeah, and so moving forward, and in our conversation, how did you come about? How did you both find Cadence?
Well, I actually went to high school with the CEO and two of the co-founders, and so a couple years ago, I had reconnected with her, and I actually was bartending at a natural wine bar here, and so they came in one day after some sort of meeting or event, and I think four of the people that worked at the company at the time were all there. And we reconnected. We had such a great time. And then two people in particular were like, I just love you, and you just seem like you'd be a great fit for something that they had in mind. And then it took about a year of back and forth and of them saying, we would love to have you here. And I always said, give me an offer, and that's how I'll know if it's going to be a fit, because I need to know what the terms and conditions are. So they finally came back with an offer, and I connected a lot with Rachel's story. Her mother passed away in 2014. Not quite as short of a turnaround, Elise, as I know your when your mother passed away, she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and then passed away 6 months later, and had a really challenging time. Personally, like my both of my parents have either been executors or supported the estate settlement process in their parents' passings, and I always saw that as I would love it to be easier for myself, as knowing that I'm most likely going to be stepping into that role. And it was fascinating seeing how every single situation was so unique and different that nothing was the same, even though there were a lot of the same tasks that needed to be done. The overall process was very different. So through my management and my, the way you the way you explained me in the bio is just so wonderful. So like in my whole life experience, I have had bad managers. I have been in not great environments work wise. And so something that really matters to me is I always want to make it easier for the next that have to come after me. So just knowing that this company was designed to make that process easier for not only the executor, for families, for anybody that wants to pre-plan or prepare their affairs, I was so on board with that, because that's what I would love to do, and also would like to pre-plan enough to have uh, my own affairs as well as some family members' affairs in order. So when they gave me this job as head of client relations, so I work a lot with our business partners like funeral homes and our wealth and financial advisor partners. I love working in those relationships and supporting businesses that way. So it was a perfect fit that blended so many things that I care about into one role.
Love that. That's amazing. Makes total sense. And Amy, what about you? What brought you to Cadence? What's your personal story?
So in my like third year university, I was at this like career fair at school and like kind of unexpectedly, I guess, I saw Cadence had a booth, had never heard of them before. And then that's where I met my now coworker, Kaylee. So she kind of explained like what the business was all about and how much they were helping people. And that really resonated with me. I lost both of my grandparents quite suddenly. So seeing how that like executor process played out for like my dad and his siblings and what that can look like if like you're not prepared. Um, so after seeing that and hearing the story, I immediately applied for an internship later that same year, and I've been here ever since. So I have kind of like gradually worked up in my marketing career here. And it really has been the perfect fit, like Andrew has said, just being able to create this change for people in such a horrible process, usually. And yeah, just making a real difference. So that's something that's really resonated with me.
Both of you mention, or at least feel free to jump in, but both of you mention, like, quote, the executor process, which those of us kind of like working in the death space, if you will, generally know what that is, but maybe either explain what that term is, like the term executor, what the executor process is, and or I know that I think Cadence uses the term like after life care. Is that right? Or maybe just give some background on what that means.
Sure. So actually, I love that you brought this up, because really in how Amy and I will be talking today is the understanding that the term executor that we'll be using is really the person that's named in the will, who takes on the responsibilities of the deceased, ensuring their affairs and assets are managed according to their wishes. And really, it's a role that's of significant trust and responsibility. This differs from a power of attorney, which is only valid while the individual is alive and ceases upon their passing. So, I know that we've got listeners from all over. So, executor, this is the term and definition that we're using. And depending on where the listener, and the viewer live, there might be a slightly different term to that same definition.
Awesome. So the executor is the person that's left in charge after a death has occurred.
Yeah. And the role actually begins as soon as the death happens, not necessarily later down the road, although that can also be applicable. Yeah. And a disclaimer, we are not lawyers, we are not financial professionals, so we're not giving legal and financial advice, and always going to be advising people to check with their local state and jurisdictions and legal and financial professionals.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for that disclaimer. I think that too, even more so, and hearing both of your stories and the alignment that you spoke to of like what drew you to Cadence is so, for me and Crystal, I feel like jump in anytime, aligned with the intention to create conversation, right? To create an ease and I think empower and give people permission to feel a sense of clarity in such a traumatizing time, right? And really it's not just in these difficult times, although they help, like it's at all moments in life. Um and really stepping up to the plate, not just in the wave of grief, like, and that's why we're here and that's what we're going to talk about, but also like when it comes to making a space in a work environment that empowers someone to feel like they can speak up or are supported, and that a work environment is aligned with someone else's, or someone's personal alignment, I think is so important.
Yeah, and speaking of like the word empower, you all mentioned that your goal, and when we had our like pre-call, your goal is to provide sort of like tools of empowerment for executors. Can you speak to, not, I mean, you can speak to specific tools, or just kind of what that means to each of you, kind of how you would empower the executor in your roles? What does that look like?
That's a great question. So, did you want to start, Amy?
Sure. Yeah. So how we kind of empower an executor, I guess, is giving them the confidence to do all the things that they need to do. So typically, when someone gets into an executor role, well, actually, before I even say that, like in Canada, at least 70% of adults just kind of think like an estate or a will, sorry, is enough, and they're kind of unsure about anything else. And then also looking at like just the term executor, what does that even mean? Only like 50% of people truly understand everything that's involved. So knowing that, what we aim to do is provide like a holistic kind of guiding experience um, that takes the executor through everything that they need to do. So a huge task list that's personalized to the individual. So just taking them through each step, supporting them with like human support. Our support team is amazing. So making sure that they are just super comfortable doing what they need to do. And then that way they can focus on their grief, right? And this doesn't have to be this huge thing that's like a huge blocker in their life, I guess. So that's how we aim to empower our executors and our families that use our product. But I'll let Andrew add anything that I've missed.
Oh, you said some great things. So, what I actually love about even your mission on your podcast, Morning Call, is really that there's part of the conversational piece to it. And, as Amy mentioned, we actually did a survey to executors a few years ago, and over 300 of them, not even half of them knew what their duties and the responsibilities were. And we hear this a lot from our funeral home partners is people don't know the journey that's going to be laid out in front of them. And it's not like we have a crystal ball that knows what their journey is going to be like exactly. We do understand that there is an administrative process. So that can look like 16 months this is an average, but statistically 16 months is how long it takes to settle an estate. And over 320 hours then is allocated to that journey. So for people that are working full-time jobs and taking on the role of an executor, like that's quite a bit. And you know so 127 hours also, if we want to talk about some fun statistics, 127 hours alone is allocated to just paperwork and administrative things. So
I was like, I don't even want to do that in my regular life,
right,
like
so
when I'm going through a death.
Seriously.
right? So people usually, as you said, don't love paperwork. So imagine knowing that you could potentially anticipate that much or roughly that much. There's a lot to it. And there's a lot that people don't know. And that unfortunately, a lot that organizations, companies, institutions don't also know about this. So our support specialists hear this a lot that executors spend over 30% of their administrative time doing repetitive tasks because these places don't actually have clear instruction on guidance of what needs to be done. So the executor is given incorrect information. They're given incorrect guidance. They have to then wait on a phone call again for an hour to somebody that they might just say, oh, you know what? In Canada, there's many different branches of the government. It's not like it's one building or one phone number that you can contact and say, can you just let every branch of the government know that this person has passed? Every single branch has to be contacted. And some of them still are working very old fashioned like and require a wet ink signature. Some can get digital or electronic signatures or fax signatures. So all of these parts also aren't working together. So it's an executor's duty and responsibility to also know these things so that they can then complete this and don't run the risk of having their loved one's identity stolen. Because can you imagine a year from now or 10 months from the date that your loved one passed away that you're then being notified that either credit cards are being opened in that person's name and you have to go through this whole other process again, which is like opening up a wound and even prolonging the grieving in the healing journey. So I just think that for executors to start to understand these things, that this might be, and just, lightly touching on it, is this might be something that you would expect if you're signing up for the role. And to those that are planning on being executors that are listening and watching, if you're not someone who's very organized and is good at communicating and being thorough in those things, I think one of my favorite examples of overhearing is if you're the kind of person that would take a bag of receipts to your accountant instead of an organized folder to your accountant, you may not want to be the executor. Or if you're thinking of who to assign to as an executor, maybe that's not the person that would come in with the bag of receipts.
I know, yeah, absolutely. That's so much. I had a conversation with my dad after we had a couple of connection calls, to prior to us recording today. And I was like, I need to talk to my dad. Like, I don't even know who he's assigned, and it's interesting. I'm recalling that conversation because I was like, Dad, we really need to sit down and talk about this. I want to make sure your wishes are fulfilled after you pass. Like, I'd rather have that conversation now than, while you're clear headed and yeah, and we can be, Aaron and I, my sister, can be clear about your wishes. And he was like, why do we need to talk about that? Like the resistance that he had around it, and I was like, because I want to talk about it, Dad. Um, and then he said, of course, he was like, well, you and Aaron are, you'll share that, and even after this, conversation, this question here and now, I'm like, whoa, like I don't know if I want to be the executor. I'm like, I'm like, maybe my sister and I need to have a conversation about what this looks like and get clear.
Well, I was just gonna say it's so because it's so overwhelming that like maybe it's like or maybe you want to share the duties. Like I because my dad passed suddenly. I mean, both Elise and I have sort of a sudden loss experience. Not that it's any easier if it's not a sudden loss by any means, because there's still all the administrative pieces. And for me, you know, Andrew, you spoke to like like kind of the administrative piece prolonging the grief. You know, my dad had a will. My mom was the executor of the will, but I'm the oldest of three. Not that my sisters didn't help, they did, but like I was very much helping her with a lot of these things. Like I'd be like, what can I help take off your plate? And the sheer overwhelm of, like you said, like it's not like one phone call or one email and a task is done. It's like very convoluted. There's nothing clear here in the US either. It's just there's not clear instructions. We don't know what we don't know because we don't talk about death in our society. So it was like adding insult to injury. Like you said, reopening a wound, and I definitely think it prolonged my grief. So having a resource like you all to help just like clear those muddy waters, and sort of like handhold as a guide would it I mean I'm so glad that you all exist. It would have been amazing to have if I had known back then. So I don't know what you all are doing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the response that we've gotten from our users and even from our business partners, like it's moving to know that people are like, wow, like I had no idea something like this existed, or we're the answer to somebody's prayer that they didn't even know that they needed an answer to. And it's really been so beautiful um to witness that and to be a part of people's journey that way and to help them, like just even going to you, Elise, of you and your sister being potentially co-executors. You know, it's like I even want to just go back to that for a second of like, wow, you know, has your dad done any research on it?
Right. I don't think he has. Like I think, and I don't even think he used the word executor. I think he used the term power of attorney. Right. So I was like, that's something else that I'm like taking notes over here. I'm like, oh, I need to get clear with my dad of like, does he even know the difference?
Yeah, because power of attorney is like when you're still alive and like if you need someone to speak on your behalf if you're incapacitated, correct?
Yes.
And also you can have that stated in the will too.
Now, and as an executor, is that outside of the will?
I believe it's listed in the will because there's many different components, and actually they have like beefed up wills these days that you can add a lot more to it. And depending on who you might go through, they might ask you more questions, such as if you were to be unconscious, and what would your end of life wishes be there? Is there someone that is assigned like a living power attorney or a backup executor even? Because, you know, in this situation with you and your sister, one of you could revoke the responsibility of an executor. Just so also people listening and watching, you can forfeit that role if it is assigned to you. And I mean, thank God, Louise, at least that you, I was going to call you Louise. Um, Thank goodness you know now that you're an executor and that you and your sister could be, you know, sharing that responsibility, because a lot of people don't know until the person dies and then they get it, they find out, oh, I was appointed as that individual for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And why I want to continue the conversation with both my dad and my sister to make sure that because I'm sure that, my sister's more the type to show up with all the receipts, and, color coded and in a file folder of organization, where I would be the one with the baggie. Right. And it's like, so maybe there's, and I've gotten better and, at least for myself. And it's identifying, okay, where are our strengths and where are our weaknesses, and how can we support each other in the process, when it's dad's time, to transition. And um I mean, and I even experienced that when we were taking care of my mom as she was passing, and my sister was very much the logical, straightforward, this is the medicine she needs, this is X, Y, and Z, where I was, the one that my mom, I think, and naturally stepped into a role where I took her to the bathroom and I bathed her and, brought us together by making a playlist and read, one of my mom's books all together just before, that really, supported the environment, I think, emotionally and spiritually. Whereas, like, my sister, was the logistical powerhouse, and they're both very much needed um, in the process and even after the process.
Oh, I love that you bring that up actually, is that the community aspect of it is so important, and it's not something to be done alone. uh correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember if you and Nurse Penny discussed these types of things on her podcast episode, because I know you talked about really that end of life experience and the environment that you were creating even for your mom and your family at that time too, and just how, whether it was perfect or not through at the time, it's the fact that those people were all brought together to be able to be in an experience and celebrate the life of someone to whatever capacity those people were able to.
Absolutely. I think, Nurse Penny talked a lot about recognizing what the dying person's wishes are. And sometimes, it's so overwhelming for the living to be in that process that, uh, as she spoke to one example of the, family rubbing a dying person's hand and just like offering this condolence to the dying person. And she kind of had to pull the family away and be like, is this what he would have wanted? And they were like, no. And it was like, as soon as they all left the room, that's when he let go, And so it's, it's ever evolving. And I think that, again, it just goes back to that clarity and the alignment of the more we talk about any and all the subject matter that goes into um these cycles of life and death, uh the more we can align that to the way we live here and now.
It's education, right? Like the more we know, the more we can be sort of like better prepared in a sense, you know, because I think at least for me, like it was such a shock. Like my dad's death was actually a shock. It was sudden, but also the shock of like all the things to do and like we just hadn't talked about it. We didn't really know. So the more we like facilitate this conversation, like we're doing today, it just I think it helps. It be a little bit easier for the family. It takes like the sting away a little bit. What are some of the maybe things? I know every death is unique, every experience is unique, every family is unique, right? So, but what are some things you mentioned kind of that like 16th month ish time cycle after a death? What are some things people can maybe expect that you all would help with?
Yeah, well, immediately after a death happens, the decision has to be made about what's happening with the body, where is it going, and how are we disposing of the body? Is it are they being cremated? Is it a burial? Is there something else that needs to be done? They immediately have to then think of, well, if this person lived in a house, like we actually have to secure the house. If there are pets, if there's dependents, there has to be a plan in place for them. And like this is all stuff that needs to happen quite immediately. This isn't like decisions that can be made over a week's amount of time. This is within hours. There are minutes even after it's happened. And then people then are usually then put into a position of event planning skills are being accessed within, because there usually a ceremony is involved and a lot of moving components have to come together harmoniously to be able to deliver on that in a short period of time, quite often. So those are some of the immediate things that have to be done: locating a will, notifying family, friends, or important people, or even knowing who those people are.
I'm reflecting on my own experience, and it's just like even through planning my mom's funeral, I like the day of I spoke and it was great and Amelia spoke and then I was like, we didn't play any music. Like there was no music. I was like, what a dud moment. Like I was like, and for me, I am so connected to that, vibrational energy of music and movement. And like my brain didn't even or couldn't comprehend that aspect in the moment. And no one suggested it either. And so I was like, "Oh."
So I love what you just highlighted, because Chris, I wanted to go back to this and what Crystal said when your dad passed away and the shock that it was to you. Something that's also not discussed because we don't know. Again, I don't have a crystal ball and nobody has a crystal ball to tell you when you find out that the loss and a death has occurred, what your response is going to be like, how loss and how grief hit you. That is a variable that we must take into consideration without understanding its implications on us. And I've heard it best said that grief makes logistics hard and logistics makes grief hard. So to also give people that knowledge and that understanding that might be, somebody like your sister, Elise, could be a powerhouse. And she probably could be in the example of, your father passing away or something, but someone else might be really strong in logistics. And then when grief comes knocking, that can throw them off, that they're actually not able to fulfill on something that's really strong in them because grief is making it challenging for them.
Well, I'm probably also more like Elise in terms of the receipts. I'm not quite an Aaron. I'm not that organized, but I mean I consider myself like some pretty organized. I'm not like that super organized, but and pretty competent and somewhat intelligent. And I remember, to your point, Andrew, like after my dad died, it was like I couldn't speak English. It was like my brain was so, it was like the shock, like the trauma. It was like an immediate, almost like having like a TBI. It was like I couldn't form words. It was like mush. My brain was complete mush. And so I had to have my husband like call my friends because I was like, I don't even know how to use the phone. Like it was such a mess. And that was kind of for a while. Like I remember going back to work and being like, how does my computer work? I mean, it just made me totally, well, some people are like the opposite and it like flips them into like go mode and they're very, they need something to do, which is fine. That's also a type of coping, right? But yeah, I didn't know that that's how I was going to react. So to your point, we never know until we're in the moment.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. You're reminding me of statistics of executors who have full time jobs. Like over 90% of them have reported a physical, mental, or emotional symptom that was affecting them in their day to day life. That was either their personal relationships, how they went about their day, all of that. And then those that were working full time, they also had, I think, over 80% of them were the ones that noticed a decline in their work and were even concerned that it could affect their pay. It could also affect could they be terminated for something like this? And actually, the statistics for this are very similar between Canada and the US. And I've heard a lot more conversations about bereavement support in the workplaces. But 3 to 5 days is the amount of time that is given for bereavement leave. So if you can imagine just having only 3 to 5 days to basically get through that little window, if you heard me talking about the immediate decisions that need to be made after a loss has happened, like it's maybe enough time for that. If there's property, if there's all of this other stuff and other assets that have to be gone through, that's something else. And then if you're really experiencing the effects of grief and it's like, I can't even make decisions right now. I don't know what to eat. I don't know what anything is. You're probably going to need more time and not need to jump into something like that immediately. depending on the individual. So I'm loving that there's more of a conversation in the work world and that there's more support being given through businesses for bereavement leave and support to people that way, because that's so important. And it might not just be the loss of a loved one. Like, I know throughout your other podcast episodes, you've spoken about grief and loss through other forms of it being relationships, even having pets and animals die or being put down is also something that could be even applicable into bereavement.
I was going to say the one of the memories I had, because you also mentioned how a lot of times these logistics are very like antiquated. You have to like physically go somewhere and get a physical signature. And I remember having to like try to help my mom close bank accounts. I mean, dealing with the banks, it was like I was in 1930. I was like, what is happening here? It was such, it's not like you can just do it online. So it just like, it was such pain.
Yeah. So, another thing you're pointing to that we often talk about, and really what part of our mission is that it's a lot of the systems that don't make it easy for us to be able to deal with these things that can also make the process even worse for us. So I sometimes think of this as it's not necessarily that we're not talking about death. It's we haven't made it easy for the living to have to deal with what it takes to clean up somebody's life from the many different ways. And we still need to, talk about it. I want to add an and to that.
Yeah, I think I keep hearing that sense of community, right? Like, who is your community? And I already feel an ease knowing that I have these questions to go to my sister with, to go to my dad with, right? And I feel like just, collectively, you know, even within my small family pod, right? Know that then I can use my other resources. Like, I can go to my next outer circle, right? And be like, okay, hey, here's what I'm going to need from you then, right? Like, and start having that conversation, or say, hey, I don't know how I'm going to react, or I don't know how Aaron is going to react in the moment. And say, this is where I may need support, right? And like, just start having that conversation, especially knowing that like maybe those outside, like the systems that we have to go to, the institutions that we have to go to, don't have that ease in mind just yet. Hopefully they will eventually.
What are some of those maybe questions or like ways to start to approach those conversations with family members like now that when you're live, like would you all suggest? Are there any that you would suggest to start with?
Yes, I was waiting for you to ask this question. So, the best questions that I would come up with first are, what are each of you doing in your pre-planning? So, do you have a will? Do you each have a plan? Because there's two ways to look at this. There's the pre-planning side from, well, I want someone else to take care of all of their affairs. But then if we really want to start with it, what have we done to organize our own affairs? I was asked by a funeral home partner just the other day. He just point blank on a call, and we have a good rapport, so it wasn't. And so he just said, "So Andrew, you tell me, where are you in your pre-planning?" I said, "I don't have a will. I'm engaged, so my fiance and I haven't, gone to that step to get wills. But I was like, that's coming, and I don't have it." And I was just honest with them. I said, "I've written some things out because I use one of our Cadence products to put things together. So I'm like, I have some information." And I've put it in there, but I haven't detailed all of my end of life wishes per se. But I was like, I've given enough that's important to me that I wouldn't really care about the rest of it. I don't have a song or a playlist of music that I'd want to hear because that would change weekly for me. But so I've started with some good stuff, and he, really encouraged me to continue to do that. And same with our financial advisors. Just to bring a fun statistic into this, and then I'm going to direct the question back to you. That in Canada, anyways, we know 90% of Canadians or more know how important it is to have a plan, and less than 20% of people actually have a plan in place, and that includes a valid will. And even then, when was that will last updated? Goodness knows. So people know how important a lot of stuff is. Where we're starting to see things is that what people know and then what they actually take action on and do is a huge gap. So what do we how can we start being people that fill the gap in that? And so I'm, coming back to this is, well, how have you planned your affairs?
Yeah. I mean, well, for me, I do have a will, and I actually, it's funny. My dad did have a will, and which was very helpful. But I think what shocked me is that even though he did have a will, there was still so much to do that I was like, oh my God, how much worse would it be if you don't have a will and you're just kind of guessing or whatever? So I got my will and my husband's will together. Now that is something that it's been a couple few years and I need to like revisit it and update it for sure. So this conversation has me saying, okay, I need to go update that. And then I actually just updated, I created a healthcare power of attorney because I just had surgery and I was like, just in case I like die on the table, I'm going to update this. So that is actually that's updated. And I did not die on the table. I'm here. So that's great. Yeah, Elise, I don't know about you.
I have had a lot of conversations about it. I have nothing written down. So I have some work to do. And I do have, it's it's interesting having the conversation, and I think that's kind of where I've been like riding the wave is talking about things like this with Amelia, my daughter who's 12, and um, I don't know, we were somewhere the other day. Maybe it was a song. She was like, "I need this song played when I die." I was like, "Duly, I think it was like Salt and Pepper Shoot or something like that." I was like, "You got it, girl."
It was amazing.
Like I got you covered.
I love it.
um, and and that's and I know that I do because my partnership. We're not married, but today is our anniversary, 8 years.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
Happy
yeah,
anniversary.
thank you. Um, and yeah, like really getting clear about, you know, finances, especially if it happened before Amelia is at the age and, you know, it gets a little tricky of, you know, I wouldn't want Hudson not to have any rights to be with Amelia. And legally right now it's like, just kind of navigating what that would look like and having a hard conversation with Amelia's father of like what that would look like. And yeah, so it really, my wheels are turning, and I think more I think I need to just get something down in writing too.
Yeah. And for me, just all the things that Elise is talking about too is I have very like basic stuff in my will. Like, do you want to be buried or cremated? Like, and I think none of those more detailed, like what song do you want played? Or like, there's some more detailed kind of like fun stuff that I think I would want, but that is like when I update, I think I want to go into a little more of the nitty gritty this time for sure.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. I have nothing written down. It's funny because it's not funny, but like throughout my life, I've always been like, oh, I want this at my funeral, or oh, maybe I want to be buried. And then like 3 years later, I'm like, oh no, I think I want to be cremated. And it's like all these things you might just talk about in your daily life, or maybe you never talk about, but like you need to have that documented. Like I'm pretty young. I've always thought like you don't do this stuff until later, or, oh, you get married and you do it. It's like, no. You should be doing it just for you as well. And like when you're young, you never know what's going to happen. um like, who knows, am I going to wake up tomorrow? I hope so, but like you don't know. So having that documented is really important. And maybe I sound crazy because I'm saying this, but yet I don't. And so it's like taking that next step is like sometimes really hard, or you don't know where to start, so then you don't do it and you just kind of hope for the best. But like everyone needs to do it. It doesn't matter what stage of life you're in, really. So yeah, but to be honest, I I am not prepared and I need to be. So yeah.
it makes you face your mortality. So it is like, it's kind of anxiety inducing. It's a little nerve wracking. So I think it's completely normal.
I think the one thing that, like, being in a consistent conversation about this, like whether it's with my sister, with Hudson, with Amelia, that it has generated some lightness. I was like, I want a mix of like a Hawaiian Viking like thing. I was like, I want a big raft. I want flowers all over me. I want to be in a beautiful gown, and then you can set me on fire and push me out into the ocean. I was like, how are you guys going to make that happen? And then, and then Amelia like had something else the other day, and then my sister was like, I just want to be a tree. And I was like, great, we can make all these things happen. And it's like I'm saying it with like laughter and joy in my voice, and I'm like, oh wait, but that is very much me, right? And there was and I think really it's about investigating what that transition is for ourselves, like facing our own mortality, and um which has allowed me to kind of be in this depth and imagination stage of like what it is that I actually want to have happen. And now it's like moving to that next phase of like, okay, what are the options and impact, right? What is doable? Um and then it brought me to another question of, okay, well, Amy, and listening to you talk, like, where do we start? What do we start with? Is there somewhere we can go to, right? Like, or, um, yeah, any thoughts around that?
Most people have, you're like, if anything ever happens to me, there's a folder in my office. Go get that folder. I don't know if you know people that have that. My parents are like that. Yeah. So that is something that actually works. We have a product that is a digital version of that that stores all that information. And then upon passing, that information is inherited by whoever the successor to or successors to that account is. So they essentially are getting that digital file that would be in your cabinet there. Um, just even some basic things to do, like a will is very helpful to have because it's something that will stand, like we will stand up and in court, and as much as things are said here and there, things that are outlined in the will are usually the things that are then how it's going to be based off of. So as great as it is to be having conversations, it's also great to be specific. So I'd say be specific the heck out of everything. That if someone says that they love this brooch that you have and you want to give it to them or you want them to have it, then state that, make all of that information there. Because just for example, from what I've learned from estate lawyers is that if there's two siblings that are going to inherit everything, well then they have to then decide every piece of furniture of the someone's leather jacket or like college ring, like they have to then each decide, well, what's going to happen with that, because technically we own 50-50. So if there's enough stuff that you're like, I want these people to have it and I want this person to have this or this person to have that or X number of dollars to this person, be specific. Yeah. And write that down in your will, not just a notebook somewhere per se. But those things, your end of life wishes, as we've been talking about, those are some great things to think about. I encourage people, and we encourage people, determine who your executor or executors are going to be. Like, research the benefits of having one, of having two, or if a trust is something that's applicable to your situation. Like, you're doing all of this for the people that are left behind. So it's not so much that you're doing this for yourself per se. It's a way to honor your own legacy. It's also for those people that are left behind. So it's easier at those times when, I just think of even when my grandparents, passed away, that there's already plans put in place. So kind of like you were saying, Crystal, like we had to go through all of these decisions and I couldn't discern A from B. So imagine having all of that already done. So it's like, okay, this person made a plan for me. They want this done. Just like you beautifully said, Elise, like I would just know exactly now how to fulfill on that because you've made a plan, which is a gift to me as a survivor or as an executor to fulfill on your wishes. So I love that specificity.
Can you all define the difference between like estate versus trust versus will, just for everybody. I feel like there's a lot of terms thrown around.
Oh, I know I did this to myself. So, well, an executor is the person that is that designated person that's fulfilling the wishes and what's laid out in the will. They're that named person that's dealing with who's taking on those responsibilities of the deceased, ensuring that their affairs and assets are managed according to their wishes. A trust is different, and usually that's assigned to then an organization and an entity that's then taking on the role of executor. And it can be, I've often heard of it in situations where there can be intense family dynamics, or if there is a large financial estate and businesses associated with it, that might be applicable. I would say research a trust and the difference between them to see if that is something that would be more beneficial for your estate versus having an executor as a named individual.
Okay. And then the estate is just like all the person's combined assets, like all the assets. Is that correct?
Yep. Everything that they owned, every place their life touched. So that's also the thing of it's not just the belongings and the possessions they had, it's what digital accounts did they have? What subscriptions did they have? What licenses did they have? Because now as the executor's responsibility is to ensure that those things could be closed out and handled accordingly. And again, to reduce the risk of identity theft protection. So that's one thing. And for financial reasons too, if they're not closed out after someone's died, there could be financial repercussions or penalties for that. And the executor or the estate is then responsible to pay those things or do those things.
Is identity theft common? Like after someone dies?
Oh,
Oh
yes.
my gosh. Wow. Yikes. That's
Yes. I mean, I believe it's an issue in the States that it's into the billions of dollars every year that is being paid out for identity theft related claims, deceased identity theft related claims. I mean, it's in the hundreds of millions of every year in Canada.
And you all primarily work with funeral homes, and then those funeral homes would then work with the individuals of the loved ones of the deceased, correct?
Yeah, you got it. So I know at the beginning you asked about aftercare, and that really wasn't something I touched on then. So it feels like a really good time to talk about it now. So, yes, we do partner primarily with funeral homes, and it's often a service that's then provided to families. So, after their time with the funeral home is done, usually that period, so service and everything is done with the funeral home. That time afterwards is the term is aftercare in the industry. Something we also mention is continuing care. So it's a way that the funeral home can continue to support the families and the bereaved after the loss has occurred. And so we're really a service and a product that falls mostly into that aftercare program because we deal with the families after the funeral home really is finished. Because it's about that time that they're starting to work on estate related tasks and also getting support in the grief and the healing journey. That's something that we found is so important to people because, kind of as we've spoken about today, it's hit us all differently and been so unique. So, as much as people need help figuring out the administrative parts, we really know how valuable it is to be supported in the grief and the healing journey. So, we have that also built into our product and our services for families.
It needs to be everywhere. I'm like, how can we get you everywhere? And I mean, because
That's our goal.
yeah, it's so um it's just essential, right? Because it's you know, I hope that this conversation, like these conversations, morning call, like just begin to spread like wildfire. Because again, it's like having these conversations have brought me a sense of ease and joy around like letting go. And I think that the process and my understanding of what letting go is really started when I lost my mom. And yes, I had lost many people prior to my mom. However, this one just hit in such a different way because it was so like it wasn't even in my mind's eye. Like my mom was supposed to live forever, right? And there had never been that discussion that she wouldn't be there. And so it's, it's, I think it's like just a deeper mission and purpose for myself of like, of creating a community and creating a, um, I don't even want to say normal conversation, just a conversation of like, it's the practice of detachment, right? And in like in a yoga practice that is just weaved into the body of like everything's kind of temporary. Not kind of, it is. Like we're, and the more I feel like I can embrace that, like the more power that is restored and how I face anything and everything in all spaces and all moments and all feelings.
Mm. Something that our users have said often to our support team when they reach out to them is that they have felt so alone through so much of the process, and really, when someone passes away, like in the context of Cadence, like it doesn't matter how much was pre-planned, it doesn't matter how much was organized. We're offering and supporting families wherever they are from 0 to 90%, and providing a way, because even if it's all done, people can still feel alone. And I love that you're also pointing to the community aspect. And I think for us as well is for people to know that they're not alone in this. And people do step into the unknown with death, with the unknown of what things are going to look like. And will they have a new picture of a new day, or are they going to be walking through the dark woods forever, so to speak? So part of what we're also here to do is to help people be on that path to honor their loved one, and also walk that pathway to have their life work for them while continuing to be with and honor their loved ones. So we also want it so people are never alone, and that's what we're here for. That's why we have live support staff available, because we know how important it is for people to be heard, to be seen, and just even talk to someone to help them figure out something that should be so simple but is so complex, and meeting them where they're at. So I just love that you're also highlighting that too, Elise. And to punctuate to the listeners and to the viewers is that if you've done so, everything that all of you have mentioned, even the little bit that Amy's done in a notebook, the fact that you've just done anything as far as pre-planning goes, like give yourself like the grace and this celebration of, I've actually done something to give the starting points of pointing people in direction and helping them. Because there's often then this idea, I think, that most of us have, that it needs to be this beautiful thing, it has to be so detailed and so organized, and we forget that even things that could be just a little bit are actually the things that are 100%, or really that's complete enough to be able to help those people. Because that's also something that then it can be our own worst enemy in having to do things. It's because, well, I haven't done enough, or thinking that I've got so much more to do, instead of even just a little bit is light years of help. So if you've done anything, and even if it's an outdated will, like you've got a will, that's something.
It's like logistics is a love language, right?
It is.
And
It is.
it's like, no matter how little or how big, like if something's there, right? Andrew, you said it, it's a gift. It's a gift to give people, a an experience of like, even if it's brief ease in a moment that can be so tumultuous and challenging. And um ah,
And I think that reflects what we're trying to do here with the podcast, which is why like this conversation with you all makes so much sense, because even if it's just opening the door a little bit and just to one, if you've had one conversation versus zero conversations, you know what I mean? It's better than nothing, right? If you just open the door a little bit to, you know, even thinking about yourself, Andrew, you turned the question on us like, okay, what have I done around my death plan? And so I think it's like we always want to start the conversation, even if it's a little bit, and get people thinking a little bit. You're saying something is better than nothing. And I just love that. So it kind of takes the pressure off a little bit.
Even the easy conversations, this is something I've learned from more of the leadership side of things, is that if we're even able to have some of the uncomfortable conversations without even an answer to it, it makes it easier for us that when the big moments come, like a loss has happened, there's some things that have already been discussed, or a different level of foundation that's been established in a relationship or in a family that just gives you something very different to launch from. So I do also like that you are encouraging conversations, or even the fact for myself, some of the conversations that I have with my family about these types of things, or asking them questions that they might not have considered about, what would you like done with these things? Our nephews have said that they love this. So would you ever consider doing that? Like, I think there's ways also that I can ask, and I mean, for all of us here, we can ask those questions without, I guess, being attached to what the outcome is, or that they have to come up with an answer. Just as you had beautifully said, Elise, of that detachment, just so that they can sit with it. Because my parents also need to sit with things, and they need to think about it the same way that I do. When someone asks me, what do you want done with stuff? I'm like, I don't know. Just let me think about it for a little bit, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes we do need that pause, right? And I know myself, of course, I like always want to go big and grand, right? And then it's like, oh wait, do I really want that? Just like allow myself to be, you know, right? Like and a lot of the work that we do in our leadership coaching, Andrew, of like, envision, like, and then like feeling it, right? And or, and I do have experience, probably way too much experience in a funeral home, and like knowing that like that doesn't like it doesn't make me feel good. And just like even having that like awareness of like, oh, what's that feeling that I want people to be left with when they're saying, goodbye to my physical body, right? Like it's more about, yeah, I don't know. That's like probably a whole nother hour conversation.
Yeah. Can I say one last thing about this? Because we often talk about this with financial advisors, and I've actually heard it in the financial sector a lot, is that just even with having these uncomfortable conversations, there are some family dynamics that are uncomfortable. There are unresolved things in sibling or family, child parent, or parent and parent relationships that never have been resolved. And so to even start bringing up some of the conversations could be something that makes a world of difference at the time of a loss. I've had even funeral homes say that they've had to hire security at funerals because families are so in disagreement about what's going to be happening, and have already been at war with each other while an individual is alive, but have never been able to find resolve, or to do what they have to do to transmute the discord that's there, to know who to be and what to do. So that doesn't ever get resolved. So if that can start to be worked upon while an individual is alive, wow, like that's going to be something that transforms a family line and a genetic line. So if you want also some good reason or some good motivation, you're the one that, if I'm speaking to you, you could be the one to be starting to make that difference that creates a whole new world and a whole new generational line for those that come after.
And a lot of times grief only exacerbates like family drama usually because everyone's like it's like a hot wire. Like everyone's like an open nerve. So it only makes it
And
worse.
then when loss happens, and then you have two people who are fighting over, dad's yearbooks because it meant something to them, or something like that. Like there could just be those things that come up because grief also can put people in a more reactive state quickly.
It's like it makes like the like minute like things you wouldn't even think about. It gives them such a like a power, right? Like and or a material item can have like take all of your power.
And for any beneficiary that doesn't agree with something that's being settled and wants to challenge the will, well, then it can be taken to court. So then an executor then also has to be the one that goes through that process.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
All the things to think about.
All of the things,
Yes,
gosh.
all the things. Well, that being said, speaking of all of the things, where, obviously, where can our listeners and viewers obviously find you all, websites, you all individually, any resources specifically from Cadence you want to share?
So anyone who's listening, watching, you can learn more about us at cadenceco.com. So we have lots of information on there about what we do for families, and also like some blogs and stuff if you're ever curious, like want reminders, I guess, like what is an executor? We have all that information. How do I start a will? Or maybe you're already dealing with the estate process and you're having some family dynamics coming up. We have lots of tips on there and stuff. So that's where you can find more information. But if you're looking to use Cadence at all, talk to your funeral home. Ask them if they provide Cadence. And if they don't, maybe they'll give us a call and be able to connect you, right? Same with like a financial advisor. We're moving also into the like wealth sector, so that's a good way to find us as well. But yeah, just ask the question, and if you want to connect with us just yourself too, you're more than welcome to do that. Again, all of our information is on our website, so feel free to do that.
Mm-hmm. And where can they find us on Instagram or LinkedIn?
Yeah, at Cadence Cares is our handle, so find us there. Again, lots of information. If you're ever curious about anything, it's all there. So yeah, follow along with us.
And we'll put all these in the show notes too. Like we'll link to the website, put the handle, everything in the show notes for sure as well.
And it would also get saved for any listener viewer that is interested in actually using the product. You could also reach out to us directly because you may not have an assigned funeral home at this point. So feel free to reach out to us and we can support you from there.
Mm-hmm.
At Cadence, we've developed two key products offering step-by-step guidance to support individuals and families during their end-of-life journey. So really, Executor Assistant is the heart of our programs. It's designed to ease the responsibilities of executors. This service provides personalized support through every stage of estate settlement. With automated form submission, grief resources, expert guidance, and practical tools, Executor Assistant helps navigate the complex and unknown challenges of estate settlement, which we have talked about a lot today. And then Legacy Planner. Legacy Planner simplifies end-of-life affairs and estate planning affairs, ensuring that all essential information is accessible when it's needed most. This digital platform helps users organize assets, accounts, and important documents in one secure location. So those are the two products that we have available to families.
No, the legacy planner is that too would be provided by like the funeral home that you are using, or is that something prior?
So Legacy Planner would be used as your pre-planning tool. So when I talked about that folder that you might have in your office, if anything was to happen to you, go there. Legacy Planner would be the digital equivalent of that. And then Executor Assistant is where well, in the settling of the affairs. So if a legacy planner is in place, it can easily be converted into Executor Assistant, and Executor Assistant can be used standalone. And that's where families and other professionals can also be invited into that journey to either support on the administrative side or to be involved in the grief care support.
Anything to add, Amy or Andrew?
Maybe a little bit more about like our grief resources, because I feel like we've had lots of conversations about grief like throughout our time talking. So we're building out our program. We know that the executor role just can't be separated from grief, right? Like that encompasses everything after a loss. So like our grief resources, we have like a newsletter that gives lots of helpful coping mechanisms and tips and like ways to approach grief. Then we have like our grief groups. So we have a wonderful grief coach. She's absolutely amazing in her sessions. And she just gives people a space to kind of share what they're going through. And then again, some coping mechanisms for them, whether that's like she just did a session on like embodied movement and how that can help with grief. So yes, I
Right
know,
up my
right?
alley.
Yeah. Yeah, so great opportunity there to like just kind of get some things out of your system too and not just like hold them in, because sometimes that's like a reflex when you lose someone, is you just kind of want to body or bottle that up rather, and just kind of tuck that away. But attending these grief groups, like I just attended one, to see what like people were feeling in them, and being able to connect with other people too that are going through the same thing as you can be so important. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what we offer with grief as well. And just lots of like other resources too, like audio sessions that might help, or connecting with community groups, getting you support that way too.
Yeah, I think that's like a full circle of our conversation here today, is really landing in whether your community is one other person or a group of people, like really allowing yourself to be in the process, no matter what kind of loss it is, that you're not alone in it. And it's truly a guarantee in life that we're all going to experience in some way, shape, or form.
Well, thank you for your time to both of you. This has been amazing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. This is such a great experience.
Thank you for joining the Morning Call podcast. Our intention is that you found a nugget of hope, inspiration, connection, or all of the above.
If you seek to dive deeper with the Morning Call community, email us, subscribe to our page, leave a review, and fill out our survey.
We want to hear your stories and widen the conversation to support and empower our grief experiences as we collectively become our true selves.
Find us and subscribe on all streaming platforms, YouTube, and at Morning Call Podcast on Instagram. You can also email us at morningcallpodcast@gmail.com.
This podcast was edited by Alexis Carrasquillo from Familia Creative Media.